Holy Ghost. Hallelujah. All right. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, praise God. We have an awesome day planned for you at Charis Bible College in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And so we will have in the next hour, we will have the DE groups. So you will be in your DE groups, level 3, lessons 1 to 4.
Just open it up.
I want to remind you also, maybe you might want to jot this down if you want to, but it is your responsibility to check your email every day.
Yes. School, we may have some of those students watching today, but the Lord just really gave me a word that I was thinking about this today, and I think that this applies to all of us. And so I want to share this out of the book of Esther. Of course, you know the background that the Jews were in captivity and they were being oppressed, and Haman had tried to exterminate the Jews and was working towards that. Mordecai found out about it and came to Esther. She had been exalted to be queen, and he came to her and asked her to go into the king and try and thwart Haman's plans. But there was a rule that if you approached the king without being invited, he had to hold the scepter out to you, and if he didn't, then you could be killed. No one could approach the king unless summoned, and she hadn't been summoned in well over a month, and so it was putting her life at risk. And at first, she, balked at it and said she didn't want to do it. And here's what Mordecai told Esther here in Esther chapter 4. And it says, then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place, but thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? And of course, Esther went ahead and humbled herself, and God used her to bring deliverance. But man, this is a powerful word. And the Lord has been speaking this to me that, there's so much negative stuff going on. And sad to say, if you are plugged into any social media, I don't spend very much time on social media at all, but I do have certain things like headlines that are sent to me every day. And if you just read the headlines, it's terrible, the things that are happening. It's just terrible, and you have a tendency to be overwhelmed by this and think, what can I do about it? But you can also look at it this way. This is a great opportunity. I remember many of you are too young to have this type of perspective. But back in the 60s and stuff, when I first got really turned on to the Lord, you could go up to anybody and say, are you a Christian? And everybody would say, certainly I'm a Christian. I had people literally pull coins out of their pocket and say, right here, it says, in God we trust. And they thought that made them a Christian. And I remember back in the 60s, and I read the scripture where the Lord said, I would you were hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, I'll spew you out of my mouth. And I remember in the 60s praying and saying, God, I wish that, if people would just be either heathen or fanatics, but this middle ground where people think that they're okay with God because they aren't, just extremely bad people. They aren't rapists, murderers, or something. I said that, man, I wish that they'd either be hot or cold. And the Lord spoke to me and he said, there's coming a time that all of this gray area is going to disappear. And you're going to find people either hot or cold. And he spoke to me that that's really a great opportunity. And this is where we are today. You find very, very, very few people that are indifferent. People now are picking sides. And they just had a senator, I read this yesterday in a headline. I didn't want to read the whole article, but the headline was terrible. And this guy, was talking about one of these things where somebody got killed, a gun violence thing. And he responded by, somebody said, our prayers are with you. And he says, your prayers don't mean a blankety blank thing. And he says, who wants your prayers? And I mean, they are coming out and being aggressive against Christianity. So anyway, all of this middle ground is departing. And I really believe that we have been birthed for such a time as this. Amen. This